Hello everybody, my name is Juliet and I am a mixed media artist working out of my home studio here in Urbana, Maryland. Urbana is just south of downtown Frederick, Maryland. So I wanted to talk to you today about the tools that I use in my mixed media art. I primarily use a paintbrush because I am an acrylic painter. I do want to be an oil painter, but I have not tried that one yet. I'll get to it. So my second tool besides my paintbrush is my Glowforge laser cutter. And that's really what brings me into the mixed media realm. I love my Glowforge laser cutter. It is a fantastic device and I wanted to tell you about it so you can learn other ways to use materials in your art if you so choose to get a laser. There are lots of different lasers on the market. I find Glowforge to be very, very user-friendly. It did have a learning curve. It took me a little while to understand all of its functions, but I have a pretty good handle on it now. And it didn't really take all that much time. It just took some trial and error. And when I got it, which was about 3 years ago, it was very new and there wasn't much out there by way of resources. There was a forum and eventually a Facebook page, which was very helpful. You could ask lots of questions. However, now there's gobs out there because a lot of people have Glowforges in particular and laser cutters in general. So what is a Glowforge laser cutter? Glowforge calls it a laser printer, which is not inaccurate, but I want to distinguish between a 3D printer and a laser because a 3D printer is more of an additive process, whereas this baby is subtractive. It can cut out of materials, it can engrave into materials, and it can score materials. Now, it can't do any materials. Its laser is pretty strong, but it's not strong enough to cut through metal. It can etch anodized metal. If metal is painted, it can scrape off the paint with the laser and leave whatever is underneath, but it cannot cut through the metal. You would need a more industrial sized laser for that purpose. It's also really good on flat surfaces. It is not so good on rounded surfaces. So if you, for instance, wanted to etch your wine bottle or a tumbler, I would not necessarily recommend a Glowforge laser cutter. They are working on potentially auto-focusing on rounder surfaces, but right now, flat is the name of the game. So when I'm building my mixed media pieces, I do it in layers. And I cut out a layer, cut out another layer, cut out another layer, glue them together, and that's how I achieve my dimensionality. So what do I use my laser cutter for? I use it for school projects for my kiddos. I use it for invitations, since it's really good with paper too. I use it for Christmas ornaments. I use it for Halloween decorations. I use it for gobs of stuff. I use it for practical things. You can build a shelf with this thing. You can put together risers for your craft table at a festival. You can make drawer inserts. I have all kinds of boxes that I've made to store my kids' arts and crafts supplies in. So it has gobs of uses. My favorite use though is fine art because I'm a fine artist and it is my passion. So I want to show you a few examples of things that I have made. I have a couple here right now. One of them is my business logo. I designed my logo in the computer long before I had a Glowforge. And then I wanted to make it large for a display that I was doing back when I lived in New Jersey. And so what I did with this is something that I do with a lot of my art, which is to mount things that I've cut and engraved in the laser on canvas. So this is just a regular stretched canvas, and I painted it. And then in the computer, I use Adobe Illustrator. There are lots of free programs out there too, like Inkscape, but being a Photoshop person originally, I taught myself how to then use Illustrator. So I made a vector design of my logo and had the Glowforge cut out the words and the oval and the hands in wood. And then I had it cut out the flower, which first I engraved and then I cut out of acrylic. And then I also used acrylic for the logo at the bottom, which I don't know if the camera is picking up right now, but we'll find out. So then I also have done, I mentioned Valentine's. My children's school previously had a paw print for its logo. So I cut a paw print out of a couple different colors of acrylic and made it into a keychain. I also cut out the paper to make a little tag for it. Here's another one. I have a lot of people ask me for things specific to their children's activities, things like that. So this one had a dance class and needed Valentine's. So I made this cutout of a Valentine for their ballerina class, and inside is a little magnet so they could keep that long after Valentine's Day. And I glued a magnet on the back. So this had an engraving of a ballerina, and it had scores of little details on the side. And when the Glowforge was done, cutting out and engraving the magnet, I filled in the engraving with paint and glitter to make it a little fancy. So I also really enjoy sometimes the scraps. Because my Glowforge Swiss cheeses its materials as I'm cutting things out, and I'm left with all these little scraps. So this one, for instance, was from a Christmas ornament that I made this past year. I needed a cutout of a snowflake, and I painted behind it the world, a picture of the earth, and I put the cutout of the snowflake on top. And then, so I'm left with this cool little cutout. It still has its masking tape on it right now. But if I peeled that off, you would see that this isn't cut out of clear acrylic. So I have this really nifty little offcut that I'm just waiting for my next winter project to utilize that. Now, let me show you the kinds of materials that the Glowforge can cut out of. It's really good with wood. This here is a sheet of maple plywood, and it currently has a masking all over it. Masking is fantastic because when the laser burns through the materials, it leaves a little smoky residue, and sometimes some charring. And while you can remove that, it's a little annoying. So some great materials come with masking on them. They are provided by Glowforge itself. Glowforge calls its materials proof grade because they went and sourced materials that are specifically designed to work very well in their laser machine. So they have maple, they have basswood, they have cherry, walnut, and draft board in their wood department. They also have lots of different veneers and also hardwoods. And so it comes with masking on both sides, and it comes with a QR code, which the Glowforge can automatically read and put in the proper settings for that material. So easy. I use proof grade materials all the time. Now, they come in 1/8 and 1/4 thickness. I have cut materials, not proof grade, up to 1/2 inch thick on the Glowforge. Thicker materials, it can still engrave very well. But I would not recommend cutting things any thicker than 1/2 inch, because the charring is just going to be out of this world. That has to cut and cut and cut and cut and cut through thicker materials. So, and then they also have proof grade acrylic. I use acrylic a lot as well. Acrylic is great because some of it is translucent, some of it is opaque, and some of it's completely clear. So this one I picked because it's got a nice bright edge on there, so you can see the nice, this is fluorescent pink acrylic. I have not used it yet, but I thought that might be something awesome for my kids one day. And let's see, they also have leather as proof grade. This is a small sample. I do have a bigger one. But leather is super fun. I'm not a leather worker, but I have played a little bit, and you can engrave on leather and you can cut it out. And I made a coffee sleeve for my husband once for his for Father's Day, and I had some kids' drawings on the coffee sleeve, so that was a lot of fun. And now there are lots and lots of materials that you can buy in stores and online that are not proof grade, but are designed to work very well in a laser. This is one of my favorite acrylics. It is a marble acrylic, and I use this to make some ornaments and also to make some memorial items because it's got just a beautiful pattern to it. They have metallics. This one is silver metallic, and sometimes they have two-tone acrylics so that when you engrave into it, it engraves into another color, which is great for making signs and all kinds of things. I did use a two-tone acrylic on my most recent art piece, in which I had a little plaque, and it was antique gold, and I engraved into it, and it turned into black where I engraved. So that was a lot of fun. So there are lots of websites where you can find a whole variety of materials. Now, if you get ones that are not masked, you don't always have to mask, especially with acrylics, because the charring isn't like wood is with acrylics. But you can get some large sheets of vinyl transfer paper, which is essentially masking paper, and mask your material and stick it in there, and it works quite well. You just have to play with your settings a little bit. All right, so that is a general overview with of what I do with the Glowforge. So I'm going to walk you guys through a project that I am in the middle of right now. I probably will not have it finished by the end of this video, but I will show you my general process. I'm going to take you all the way from designing the original in the computer, which is always the first step, all the way through cutting it and hopefully some assembly. So I hope you enjoy. Thank you so much. The project I am working on here is for submission to the Women's Caucus for Art DC Chapters exhibition called Changing the World, Women Role Models. So I chose to create an homage to Dr. Jane Goodall. I have long looked up to her as a simply stellar human being. So for this work, I am using this photograph of Dr. Goodall and a chimpanzee for my reference inspiration. She is an excellent communicator, and I thought she looked like she was communicating with the chimpanzee in this photograph. So what I did was I loaded it into Illustrator and am using the pencil tool to draw the outline of the image. It does take me many hours and days to work on my design, so you're going to see me fast forwarding through much of the process here. The lines you see me drawing will become the cut lines that the laser will cut out of the wood. Usually in my mixed media works, I paint the different sections after cutting them out, but for this one, I'm going to use a variety of beautiful woods of different species and leave those woods naturally colored. Dr. Goodall does love trees, so I thought this would be a good way to honor her legacy. After drawing my general outlines, I go back through and tweak each one to create the exact shapes that I'm looking for. These are all vector lines, which are different from a pixel-based illustration known as a raster image. The benefit of using vectors are that they can be resized and manipulated any way you want without losing resolution. Also, the laser reads vector lines. It can engrave raster images, so in theory I could have engraved this actual photograph on the wood itself, and the engraved photographs can turn out absolutely amazing, but I did not take this photo, and I do not want to use it without permission. So, in any case, I don't care about how big the drawing is here because I can size it however I want later on. And even though the cutout pieces will end up being pretty small, I bend every curve, every angle, every line exactly how I want them to be. And here you can see I turned off the photo layer, and you can see the final outline of the figures. Ignore the artboard rectangle. That's not important right now. All right, so skipping ahead a bit, now I am working on the inner cut lines. I'm basically sectioning off the different tonal areas along the contours of the image. These contour lines are not yet connected to each other, but eventually I do spend a whole lot of time closing each shape individually so that they all fit together like puzzle pieces. And there you have it. That is the final drawing for all of the figurative part of the work. And now you see me designing the background that all of these wooden puzzle pieces are going to fit into, like an inlay. I decided to make it circular, and it's kind of like our planet, and engrave one of my favorite Dr. Goodall quotes on that background piece of wood. It takes a little while for me to nail down all of the font and configurations here, so that's what you see me doing. Now I've duplicated the same size circle that I am using to bend the font for her quote to write her name on it at the bottom. The figurative work that you see in the middle will be cut out of this piece of background wood, and the text is all going to be engraved. There I just put in a circle for a score line as well. The blue circle is going to be a score line just for some visual interest. I didn't particularly like the way the font left some of the letters open, so here I'm going through and tweaking the letters to close them up slightly. And there is the final design. So when I am talking to the laser, it knows that each color is a different step, and I can tell it which color I want to do which step. So I have the red circle on the outside, I have the bright red text, which is a different color, and the bright red text I'm going to select to be engraved, and the blue is going to be a score line, and that black figurative drawing in the middle is going to be cut out of that base. The whole thing does not fit in my Glowforge. It's too big. So I bisected or trisected the piece into 3 sections. And I have this file here that shows exactly how big the laser bed is and how far it can engrave to. So I can see that these 3 sections that I cut the piece up into will fit on 2 different sheets of wood. So the big middle piece will be 1 sheet of wood, and the 2 side pieces will be another. And then I want a backboard to mount the whole thing to keep the inlay in, and that I did out of 2 hemispheres of wood. And so I'm going to score the figurative work on the backboard because then I can have lines to match up all of the little pieces that I'm inlaying in there, and I won't have to keep track of where everything goes. All right, so it's time to throw them into the Glowforge because now I have the digital design done. So this is a piece of basswood. It is proof grade, so it comes nice and masked already, and I don't have to do that. Now I am sticking little pins down in the corners to make sure the wood is as flat as possible. And then I go to the interface online with Glowforge itself, positioning my first cut. And then I can tell it what color I want to be what step. I let it know what the score line is going to be, what the cut line is, and what the engraving line is. Well, the engraving spaces, that's the text. And I normally don't have to tell it what kind of wood is in there if it's proof grade because it can read that QR code on there. But I have a glare because of my window right now, so I couldn't read it properly. Usually I'll just put some covering on the top of the Glowforge so it won't have that glare, but I wanted you to be able to see it. All right, so anyway, it is going to take 1 hour and 10 minutes to do this first sheet. The reason why it's taking so long is because I have that arc-shaped text,
and it does take a while for it to go through all of those lines. So here it goes. I had pushed the magic button and it's off. Now it's the score line first because that's the way I ordered it. So that's just a nice little top border. Then it does the little score line at the bottom from the other part of the section. All right, fast forward. And here, ta-da, is some engraving. And fast forward some more. And now it's doing the cut lines. Cutting out where Dr. Goodall's going to go, and it's cutting out the top as well. And the bottom. Now I get to take it out and see what it looks like. This is my favorite part. That thing that was in my head is now suddenly in front of me in 3 dimensions. All right, so now I am putting in the second piece of wood for the next cut. And then here is me taking all of that masking tape off. I used Gorilla Tape to assist in all of the little tiny bits that stick in the letters and things like that, because that's a real nail saver. And push the magic button again after I sent the next part of it to the Glowforge, and through the magic of editing, it's done already. That one took another hour or so. So these are the other 2 pieces. And I can unmask those as well. All of the weeding, and then I'll be able to put those 2 pieces together with the middle piece that I cut first. Glowforge Pros have a pass-through slot, so you can do bigger pieces inside them. I have a Glowforge Basic, so I do chippy chop up my pieces a decent amount. And there it is together. So the backboard will go underneath that, and the inlays will go in all of that negative space you saw in the middle where the figures are. So these are all of the pieces of beautiful woods that I have. Being a mixed media artist, I get them for my birthday because that's what I ask for. So I have this whole variety of woods that I've kind of been saving for good, but I think this is a pretty good purpose. So I think I can use all of these different woods to cut out her different skin tones, her hair, the chimpanzee, and all the little bits, and maybe that one for her mouth. The quote says, "It's only when we learn to operate with head and heart in harmony that we can achieve our true human potential." I absolutely believe that, Dr. Goodall.
Thank you so much for watching my video about my process as a mixed media artist and about how I use the Glowforge laser printer. If you have any questions at all about the Glowforge specifically, or about my process that I do, or just art in general, I am totally here for you. Please contact me. You can find me on Instagram at Juliet's Balcony Art. Same on Facebook at Juliet's Balcony Art. And also my personal website for my business is www.julietsbalcony.com. So just give me a message and I will get back to you. Thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful day.